Joy Drive.
Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Oh, good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
I know. I said last week that we're going to be talking about Drag Me to Dinner, but...
I was looking forward to it.
But it didn't turn up on Disney Plus. I don't understand why that is, because it is been available in America for about 5-6 days now. I don't know why I never made it here. I jumped the gun. I'm a big fan of the hateful Bianca Del Rio. So I was hoping to be able to do some of that comedy this week, but alas, no. Instead, what have we got?
We have got Stay on Board. Stay on board. So Suzy and I were messaging on the weekend going, oh my God, Suzy, I can't find Drag Me to Dinner. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And then we realised it wasn't available. So we came up with another one and it's called Stay on Board. And it's a documentary, Suzy. What's it about?
When Leo Baker first came into prominence in the early 2000s, barely in his teens, he was a rising star in girls and women's skateboarding. When this documentary Stay on Board commenced filming in 2019, 28-year-old Leo was still going by his dead name Lacey Baker professionally as we watch him navigate the stringent binaries in sport, where he had established himself as one of the world's top skaters and was in the running for being part of the 2020 American Olympics team for women's skateboarding. By the time the camera started rolling, Leo was well into his transition. And for those of us unfamiliar with the sport, it looked so bizarre to have him referred to as Lacey and see him competing in women's categories. Speaking as a trans person, it is never easy having your social conditions adjust to your newly affirmed gender. It is one thing to come to terms internally and personally, but to have your wider world change accordingly often takes years. And that process is always awkward, at least, but often it's downright difficult and painful. For Leo to continue competing and to make his own living, he must tolerate the never-ending misgendering that takes place in the arenas of sport and sponsorship. In the Netflix documentary Stay on Board, we observe that the system is so rigid that he can't just come out and make everyone shift overnight. The film shows us for 2 years at least, Leo is suspended in a state of limbo, unable to fully become his authentic self. I found the film heartbreaking, so incredibly sad to see even our young ones having to go through the same old difficulties. I guess I do have delusions about the world becoming better and easier for new generations. I love that this is a film about queer people in sport, and I love that this is a film about trans men. It is true that trans women appear on our screens a lot more simply because women are traditionally considered objects to be looked at. Stay on Board actually appeared on Netflix 10 months ago and seems to have just sunken without a trace. I didn't know about its existence until three days ago, and that is a real shame. This is a fantastic film, and I urge everyone to take just 70 minutes to check it out. Warren, aren't you glad to have seen it?
I tell you what, Suzy, I actually wanted to start today and say thank you so much because you bring these shows to us that we may not necessarily watch. Now, I have no interest in skateboarding whatsoever, and I would never have watched this documentary. I would have seen it was about skateboarding and thought, there's no way I'm going to watch it. But because you brought it to our attention, I watched it, and I really, really enjoyed it, and it was such an eye-opener because I sort of thought things would be a little bit smoother, particularly when you've got, I suppose, the authority that Leo has in terms of how good he is and how professional he is and how, he's on top of the ranking in terms of a skateboard rider. I would have thought that would have given him some sort of clout and credibility, but oh no, he still had to face the prejudices of the sponsors and all this stuff going on and the struggles. I was actually really shocked and saddened watching it.
Yeah. Same. Like, I knew that these systems are really rigid. I didn't expect that because Leo was a star, that the systems would sort of bend to his needs easily. But it was hard to watch how hard it was for him to push for what was rightful for him, And I remember that experience when it first started. You kind of walk the world almost apologetically you're almost like embarrassed, and you find that, oh, why am I being so inconvenient for everyone? Why are my decisions making things so difficult? And like that phone call he made to try to get his top surgery done, and he was so like awkward at giving them his name, because obviously his medical name was different, and it's those little things, they look little, but they're all through the day, every day. And I was wondering, for someone like you who has never had to experience the trans stuff, like you said, it was an eye-opener. So I guess a lot of that stuff never crossed your mind? Well,
it has crossed my mind, but I think it was more you see the emotion and the anguish on Leo's face. And he says, I know what's best for me, but it's clear that everyone else is saying what's best for him. You should go and compete in the Olympics, and, you shouldn't ruin this opportunity. It's once in a lifetime and all this sort of thing. And constant pressure. And you just, the thing that was the eye-opener for me was watching, you've got someone who wants to be their authentic self, and then you've got all these people around saying that, no, you can't be your authentic self because you've got all these opportunities, and then the cost that it had on Leo. You could see the emotional drain. I mean, he was even saying, I'm not sure I'll be here in 12 months.
Yeah. He did mention explicitly the word capitalism. It's really interesting when you're trans, you're very conscious of that. Like, I think normally people kind of don't vaguely understand that capitalism underlies everything we do, but when you're in the period of transition, it's very obvious to you how these decisions you've made, in the middle of your lifetime, to kind of affirm your gender rather than change your gender, but to affirm your gender, and suddenly there are all these things that find it really hard to adjust to you, and how, because so much of his income was dependent on sports sponsorship, and how they had classified Leo as a woman skateboarder, that so much of the sponsorship was dependent on a certain appearance, a certain image, and because of them coming to the period of transition, and that presentation had to change, and how that was holding him back, that he felt like, oh, maybe I can continue with this drag persona for a while.
We're talking about Stay On Board, which is a documentary that is screening on Netflix if you want to catch it. Yeah, I found that as well. And the sponsors, I mean, as Leo's hair shortened, the sponsors dropped off. And that, I was thinking, well, I can't believe it, because he's a really good skateboarder. Surely kids aspire to be a good skateboarder. It just defied logic that why would the sponsors drop off because Leo's cut his hair? I just found I didn't get it. I didn't understand that, and now I see what you mean by capitalism. It was just driving him to be someone that he did not want to be, and then having that, I suppose, it's not like he had just a mundane job and he the next day cut his hair short, decided to transition and continue on with that job. It didn't make any difference. I mean, his whole livelihood was dependent on these sponsorships. So you're looking at your whole career, and then at one point I think he was being by himself and being in private and saying, it's easier for me to withdraw and be in private because it's the only time that I get to be myself. Did you ever experience that, Suzy?
Oh, all the time. I still do. Like, staying at home is it's such a pleasure for me, and I think for a lot of trans people. You just, like, much as I am a confident person, much as I kind of have sort of figured out, a way to exist socially, it still takes a lot out of me, and some days, you just feel like, oh, I'm so much happier just being at home. And there is a lot of footage of him sort of kind of in a state of retreat, which is, I think, very authentic to a lot of trans people. I wish that the film had addressed more about sport. You know how we talk about how trans women shouldn't be competing with cis women, and trans men shouldn't be competing. But, I feel like skateboarding is such an individual thing. Like, he's not competing against someone directly. It's not like you're wrestling or you're playing tennis. And I wanted to understand, why wasn't he able to switch over to competing with men? I'm sure there are all these cogs in place, and I wish I had a greater understanding of why he wasn't, able to easily become a skateboarder in the men's categories. I wish I knew that.
Is there only the binary categories for sport in the Olympics? Is that all that exists? Like, I agree with you, because the body is placed on the board, and then the wheels. It's not like I don't know. I just don't know. I didn't understand the argument for why he couldn't just compete as a skateboarder. I don't understand what the difference was, because I don't know. You just when you watch the movie, you just think that they're just going around. They're doing their flips. They're going up on rails. They're doing all sorts of things. Does it matter?
Yeah, sometimes I think something like archery, or bowling.
Bowling. They're our sorts of sports, Suzy.
What does gender have to do with it? I don't understand. I'm sure they have their justifications, or maybe there are reasons. But that's the one thing that I wish the film was able to address a little bit. Why there wasn't any talk about Leo moving to the men's categories. But other than that, I just think it's so beautifully done, so sensitive, and there's so much intricacy, that we don't really see in these documentaries. I think because the camera was able to catch him at such an important time. I have suspicions that it's the girlfriend who's shooting a lot of the footage.
I was wondering that too.
Yeah, but I think they didn't want to turn it into a documentary about their relationship. So I understand that she kind of stood out of it a little bit. But because she was there so much of it, and it was so intimate, you were able to get so many intricate, little detailed little things that were making things so hard for him during that time.
It's called Stay On Board. It is streaming on Netflix. Suzy, I really liked his mum. I thought, she's come from a bit of a rough background, and she talks about that in the documentary as well. And and she talks about how she feels for other kids who don't have the parents that necessarily say it's okay when you come out and you say you're gay or you're trans.
Yeah, she really understands the challenges, and she really understands what the child needs, and she has completely no problems with it, which is really weird that we expect that she has problems with it, because we are so used to that kind of narrative,
Absolutely. How did you feel when you were watching it and you saw the support that his mother was giving?
I don't think that hit me as hard. I felt like, oh, good for her, and I wish that everyone was that. And it was a good example to set. It was like, what's the problem? It's such a simple thing to support your flesh and bone. I was just really emotionally shaken with the turmoil of that period where he kind of was watching the world that he had loved and that world that he has created over 20 years kind of quite quickly disappearing, and him sort of losing grip on the world. You could see it moving away from him. You could see that because he has decided to live as the man that he is, that all these things that he has worked hard for, that he has excelled in, that he was a star of, you could see that he was going to lose all that, and that was heartbreaking. And
you could see the tension in him too, because he was living two lives essentially. He was living the life of Lacey, the skateboarder, and Leo, the authentic person, and the drain that it was having on his life as well.
Yeah, the drain is real. Everyone, I imagine most people would have experienced a period of that time where you kind of you're not transitioned everywhere at the same time. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to sort of do it place by place a little bit. And I do remember that. And that was I guess maybe because I remember how difficult it was. The funny thing for me is when I was going through it, I had a lot of joy. I had a lot of feeling of emancipation, feeling of freedom. And also when you're going through difficult things, any difficult thing, your mind just has this, I guess you call it resilience or something, or this strength that prevents you from almost being too close to the tough stuff. You have this ability as a human to almost ignore those things and then just kind of plow ahead and kind of go really hard, especially when there are good things to celebrate about it. So I remember the good things and don't kind of remember so much the tough things. But when I watched the documentary, all of it sort of came back. And it was interesting that I could see how I was, blocking those things, understanding that, this is what I have to do, and this is hard, but I will not focus on it.
Suzy, did you have any, when you decided to transition, were there any impacts on your career?
I think it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Like, sometimes I don't know whether it's because of my race. Sometimes I don't know if it was because I was a gay man at the time and then became a trans woman. There are all these things. Sometimes you think, is it because I'm a trans woman versus a cis woman? There are all these things that you never know what's what. But I was in a situation where I felt a certain status, a certain level of privilege and power. So I wasn't sort of in the bottom rungs of a company. I was, I felt quite sort of indispensable, as one does sometimes in a company. You feel like, I'm doing this job so well, they can't get rid of me. And then I transitioned. So so it happened for me late. So I think it's quite a common thing. Famously, Caitlyn Jenner transitioned like in her 70s or something when she had tons of money, tons of power. And then you feel almost like, all right, I'm untouchable now, then I can do it. So, there is that experience. I don't think it affected me directly very much, but who knows?
Do you think, though, having watched the documentary Stay on Board on Netflix and having watched Leo go through that transition at such a young age, do you think, though, that if Leo was a bit older, do you think that he might have been able to see the world and understand the world and why it's reacting the way it is? Do you think that would have made a difference, or does it not matter at all?
I don't think they didn't understand. I think they knew it was coming, which is why it takes time, like he looks young, but actually he was already in his late 20s when we were watching him transition. So he had been putting it off, and there were moments where he said, maybe I should put it off until it's over, until the career is over. And, that is a possibility. Lots of people wait till they feel like they have no skin in the game and then they transition. That's a common experience. We can't say what's right or what's wrong. You just got to do what's right for you. For us, we benefit from this opportunity of watching it happen at such a crucial moment of him, almost going to the Olympics and then somehow not able to suppress the authenticity. And then those two things, his trans identity and the possibility of being the first person, one of the first people to skate at the Olympics. This was a great story for us.
But, I must admit, I was like, you could see the relief though when he decided, what, stuff the Olympics. I'm going to be me and I'm going to choose me over the Olympics. And you could certainly see the relief there when he made that decision.
Yeah, the relief comes after, doesn't it? Like when they were leading up to it, it was just such a big deal that you saw him kind of just tolerating all the really difficult stuff. There was this footage of him at this like award ceremony and and continually all through the thing, because they were, singing his praises, just using she, her, she, her, she, her. And he was sitting there, this big man. And then the chairperson coming over personally to congratulate him about doing things for women's sport, and then also using she, her. It was so difficult, and you knew that he was going through it because he had his eyes on the Olympics.
Yeah, and the other thing, Suzy, just before I let you go, is that really saddened me was when you see how revolted he is in his own body. That was really sad to see.
Yeah, that's a big issue for trans people. We all experience that differently, our relationships to our own bodies, but there is a big sort of sequence of him going for his top surgery. I mean, it's completely understandable where he's coming from, but it's painful to watch. And my personal wish is that fewer and fewer trans people will have to experience that. Fewer and fewer trans people feel the need to go through all that surgery. Hopefully we can come to a place and a time where, our God-given bodies are good enough.
Well said, Suzy. What are we going to be watching next week?
Much lighter.
Much lighter? Is Drag Me to Dinner on?
I just checked half an hour ago. It's not on yet, so
Not
we
on
can't
yet.
do
Okay,
that.
we're not dragging ourselves to dinner. Where are we dragging ourselves to?
The Other Two is an American sitcom on Binge. The story follows two floundering millennial siblings who must grapple with their 13-year-old brother's overnight fame. It looks like a really frivolous thing, so maybe it's a good switch from Stay on Board. It's called The Other Two, and it's on Binge, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, Suzy.